Boys, let's go a-raiding! The MSQ is complete and now it's time to start polishing things up. I made a decision last year that when we dive into an MMO, we consume absolutely as much as possible of the new content, new things to check out, new experiences, before we move on to our next projects. And that is where we are. I have a number of things to do. We're going to be doing it over the next week or so. I want to get all the role quests done. I want to check out the traveling... the space travel, I don't think it's working yet. I want to do the raids. I want to do the extremes. The only one up in the air really is Savages. We'll see what's going on with that. I want to do the hunt trains. I want my turtle mount. I want all those kind of things. But today, it was the raid. Oh my. You know what I'm going to do first of all, though, is I'm going to talk about the encounters. I think because this is by far the highlight of what is going on in the Arcadion, is the encounters themselves, because they are tremendous. They are fantastic, and I cannot wait for the Savage race. A side note here, the Savage race to world first, new team, Echo, full going world first mode. That's going to be next Tuesday. You'll find us on twitch.tv/Echo Esports. It's just been announced. I will be casting for them. I'm super excited. It's going to be like a 24-hour straight session, it looks like. It's going to be chaos, man. It's going to be absolutely chaos. I'm super excited for it. So we'll have some vlogs and stuff here, but I will be traveling there. So be aware the live stream will be disrupted as it goes. First fight, Black Cat. Great introduction. Absolutely great introduction. I liked this character a lot as a fighter, and I love the idea that the Arcadion is everything we predicted it would be in the MSQ. They do not fear death. In fact, they can die and it's fine. That would obviously lead to some sort of blood sport. We find out that Jarul did put in the idea of taking the beasts, and then we go into it, and Black Cat turns into this monolithic creature. Everything about this fight was just really clear. And that's what I loved about this. It was really, really clear. They did a great job here of showing what the boss should be doing, so that if you've seen it once, and this is what I look forward to in FF14 encounters, more so than WoW. Like, WoW, I see kind of like the Matrix. Like, before the fight even sort of starts, I can pretty much predict half the mechanics. And if there's a tricky mechanic, you just kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, that's how that works. In this one, it's a case of it probably will kill you. But as soon as you figure it out, especially if you're not sure if it's like a push that pushes the dangerous things or pushes you, and once you figured it out and where you're supposed to go, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, totally fine. Absolutely fine. Like, I get it, and we're probably going to be fine for this next time. And it had a good array of mechanics in it and a great introduction. Nice and simple. I will talk a little bit at the end about the forum thing that's going on from a very vocal minority of people who think everything is a little too hard. Let's move on to the fight that I am both angered by, for not the reason you probably expect. Honeybee Lovely. Honeybee Lovely. My frustration with this counter is, like, it is obviously excessive waifu, IAR, fan service overload. Like, I can only imagine the fan art that exists of Honeybee Lovely and the way she talks and the insane thousands and thousands of requesters like to replay this fight. This is the only fight we replayed in like full Japanese voices because they knew it would annoy me. That really squeaky, childlike voice that they do and all that. And you know what really annoyed me about this is this encounter is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And I was like, I hate, and if I will tell you now, a clip was sent to Squeenix of me being so angry that I hate that I love this fight. And I will mute it forever forward and play other music over it because it's the audio that kills me. But the actual encounter is right up my street. And why? It's the most wowish fight I've seen in a very long time. In fact, we had a couple of the casters for more FF14 type casting who were like, yep, this is the most WoW adjacent fight they've done probably since Coils, where they were building off the WoW model, but it didn't really fit. They were, you know, much more amateurish at the time at what their raid style was going to be like. And they traversed over to the more FF14 style, which it eventually developed into. And this is like a return to that. I kind of wonder a little bit. I've been on the lookout. Like, I've been keeping a watchful eye for new styles of mechanics that Yoshi P was a little afraid of, and they'd open the doors to allow them back in. I think this I was expecting some sort of very grandiose thing. Something that was like, oh, that's new, and I can see why people would hate it. I kind of wonder if this is part of that. And the reason I'm saying it's WoW adjacent, there is a lot of room here for micro adjustments and on-the-fly gameplay. if we're being very generalized without getting the actualies going here, a lot of FF14 mechanics often break down to everybody has to be in the right place at a certain time, otherwise you get killed in a lot of ways. You die. If you're not doing the pattern, the dance correctly, then something horrible happens to you. That, in normal mode, that's often like vuln stacks and things. But often, as soon as you go into EXs, and obviously this will occur a lot more in Savage and Ultimate, is that you will just die. And I've no doubt that will still exist in Savage, and I'm sure we're going to see that. But this one was like, okay, we're going to demand of you a lot of micro-adjusting, moving, on-the-fly decisions that can alter and change constantly. And it's not just a case of just, this is the attack, be in the right place, attack resolves, go on to next thing. Because that's usually what you see. Is it like, and certainly if you get trios, it's like you've got to be here, here, here. And if you're not in one of those spots, then you're probably dead or something else. And Honeybee Lovely is more like, you can kind of be anywhere. It's okay, because we're going to, like, do a lot of things, but you can also have time to move around and adjust and figure it out. And we're also going to have more random things happening in the encounter, which means that you can't just be like, okay, you go to A to B to C to D to 1 to 2 to 3. You can go all over the place, and it'll still be fine. It'll still be absolutely fine. And I loved this, because it played right to my strengths. I was like, this is fine. There was a lot, even though it was my first time, and I think I did die on the first one. We took a couple of pulls, but a lot of it was other people dying, which is kind of what we saw in Coils. Is that I was more comfortable because this is what I like. I'm not a big dance fight guy, as many of you know, and I loved this fight. I just hated the audio that went with it. The audio and the overly sexualized nature of it. I was like, God, man, I could always, and of course the chat fully embraces it because they know I don't like it, and they're like, yeah, let's go the whole way. So yes, probably I would say Honeybee Lovely, annoyingly, was the fight of the raid for me. I loved it so much. Just broke away a little bit. I'm not saying a lot, and I want to be clear before someone starts essaying, is like, well, actually, if you look at P3S2 or whatever, it was a little difference. It was just a slight difference that was very noticeable, and by a lot of the experts who were also watching, who've done, I've not delved into Savage too much, as you well know, is that they were like, yeah, like you can feel it when you're doing it. It's just a little different. It's just a little different, and that's what I really appreciate about it. Not there was some huge swing, just little difference in the usual style, and I truly appreciate that. Then we went on to Brute Bomber. The style of this fight I loved. I didn't love it as much as I liked Honeybee Lovely, because this was more on the, like, pay attention to boss model, be on the right side, right? Especially with his clothesline charges and things like that. And his poison slap is like, okay, it's a very set place you have to be, and once you're in that place, you're fine. And some simple overlap of mechanics. Like, mechanically, fine. Like, you know, not an S tier by any means, but more than good enough. It was the style I loved. I'm a pro wrestling fan, or was. I trained, some of you still don't know, but I trained for a couple of years to be a pro wrestler. That's what I wanted to be around the age of 17, and went training to become a pro wrestler. I decided to discontinue that course of career path, because when the veterans were coming to visit us and talk to us, they were all on walking sticks or wheelchairs or horrendously physically beat up once they'd reached their 50s and stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's not the future I particularly want. So I transferred being slammed through tables and jumping off ropes to sitting in a comfy chair, and it worked out very, very well for me that way, but that's what I wanted to be. So I have a really high appreciation for this level of encounter. So it was actually like the demonstration. I mean, there's massive shout-outs here to the guy using steroids in the middle of the fight and being disqualified, and then doing a full heel turn, which means bad guy, and smashing the referee, taking that out of it. Like, all that design, great. Absolutely great. Like, that, I was fully immersed into it. Not as mechanically interesting as Honeybee Lovely, but the whole scenario was considerably better. Again, really high-class quality content. On our final fight against Europe, I call it Europe, but Wicked Thunder. I do like the wrestling names, you know, the more childish ones that they're giving, but Wicked Thunder, you know, for the for the whole arena stuff. Yeah, it was okay. I'm like thinking about, like, did it blow me away? No, it didn't. But it was cool. It was cool. When I say that, and a lot of people on the internet always, like, if you're not, like, mind blown by it, then it must be terrible. No, it was great. It wasn't my favorite. But it was more than fine. Lots going on. I loved the modified arena that was going on. I loved the indicators on this as to what you were supposed to do. It all made a lot of sense. I overthought a couple of mechanics, but it's normal mode, and they kept it pretty simple. Once I was like, oh, okay, I'm really seriously overthinking this as to how this encounter should work. Clearly, and I wonder if, again, coming back to what Yoshi P was saying with Unleashing It, I wonder if people... And this is probably why we should talk about the forum post, is that there are some vocal people who are like, they've made the raiding and the trials too hard. I don't feel that, but I'm also like, you know, a very experienced raider. I've been raiding 20 years, like 15 of those at the extreme high end of World of Warcraft. And, you know, in the very, very top echelon of raiding. So I didn't feel that. But what I did notice is certainly the cannon mechanic where, you know, the 5 ways blast, where you have to remember, not only do you have to move really fast across a midline, you have to remember the order, which isn't too bad. That's pretty normal for Final Fantasy. But then you have to move very, very quickly. Like, usually there's like a stutter step in between, but not this time. And I noticed it was eradicating a lot of players. A hell of a lot of players. Like, it caught me out a couple of times. It was like, oh, they're making you go really quick with this. Like, left, right, left. And you've got to remember it clearly. And if you weren't, certainly I felt bad here. I want to point out the raid group I did this with was like 6 blind players who had not done it and 2 that had done it. And on the final encounter when someone had to go, there was 3 players who had done the raid before, and the remaining 5 were all blind. It's the first time they'd seen it. But we had a lot of Australians in the group. We were obviously playing on the European servers with a lot of lag, and it caught them out quite severely. And it wasn't because they didn't know what to do. It's just the fact that you have to move pretty quick after the laser blast goes off in order to get back into safety. And I was like, yeah, you have to be a little careful with this, certainly with FF. It doesn't have the best latency stuff, as we know. It's not as tight as WoW is on that side of things. And for those people who play with a bit of ping, a little higher latency, like you could see that this was like, it's a little annoying. I know what I need to do, but I do play with like a couple of milliseconds extra, and it's definitely catching me out here. So I was just watching that. I will also point out we had a cameraman, so we were kind of 7-manning it. Because one of the cameramen there is filming for the Echo trailer for the Race to World First. So don't worry about the deaths you're seeing on the screen by any means. It's not everyone's a try-hard in this group or anything like that. But I thought it was fine. I do have concerns about mechanics, and I've had this. No, this isn't an FF14 thing. I've had this for a long time with WoW at the high end. It's an online game. You do need to be very careful, I think, when you're designing raid encounters. WoW's biggest guilt here is a single mechanic that eradicates everybody. If one person makes a mistake is the idea, then you're all going to die. However, you're playing online. Disconnects, a little bit of lag spikes, they happen. And it never feels good that one of your players, who you love and is an amazing player, but maybe is playing from the US or something like that, can almost be rendered a liability despite their immense skill because they have 200 ping instead of like 70 ping. And so, some of you are probably going to type, dude, I play with like 300 ping. Exactly. It can catch you out every now and again. It's a bit of a problem. But overall, it was a great fight. Like, really enjoyable. Nice and clear again. I think that's the biggest testament I'm taking away from here is like the clarity of mechanics was really nice. The second half of things to talk about, the story. I don't think I've had a raid story I care less about at all than Arcadion. I do not care. I do not care whatsoever. And I'm thinking back to like Eden and Omega and Alexander and all these, and Whirlit and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, I don't care about Black Cat and Europe and all that. But I hope it develops. I really don't hope it develops. Certainly compared to Pandemonium, where I was like, oh my god, this is dope. This is dope. You know, like the Endwalker raid. And going back to their sweaty gym, it felt like you were just in my way. Rather than be like, oh god, I wonder what lies deeper within here. And maybe more on the wrestling theme. But no, it's like, let's go back. Let's meet my sister. And I've got this problem with my other sister. And we're dying. So, I mean, the main theme of the story is that they're basically poisoning their souls. And it's kind of got, I think it's somewhat inspired by The Running Man. I think it's an early 90s, maybe late 80s Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, which is a great, phenomenal movie. I've watched it many, many times. Where they they have these like gladiators fighting this arena with the incentive that you win your freedom, because the gladiators are prisoners who are chased by bounty hunters essentially. And the trick in the movie is that they have these people who won and they hold them up in high regard, and they show trailers of Whitman, Weiss, and Haddad. They're enjoying the great Maui sun, and they show these guys like on an island. They won their freedom. They beat the Running Man, and because you need hope, you need that carrot. Otherwise, why would anybody take part in a gladiatorial arena with a 100% failure rate? You wouldn't do it. So they have this up, but it turns out it's false, and it's kind of here because they have this idea that if you age out of being in the Arcadion as a gladiator, that you get immortalized and you are safe forevermore, and it turns out that's not true. In fact, by using all these beast souls all the time, you kind of poison yourself and you get psychonecrosis, I think it's called. It's got some strange name. Whatever the disease is, it screws you up, right? That's the point. And Europe is suffering from it. And they're trying to find a cure. Now, this could develop into a great story. I would say for the first part of the raid story, I was so massively uninterested. I just wanted to get back in and do the fights because the fights were so fun. Instead of... Certainly with Pandemonium, it came out, I was like, oh, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? What's the development? And I was into it, and I felt that way about Eden. I felt that way about all of those things. Certainly like Alexander with a bit of time travel stuff in. I'm like, oh, what's going on? I will say, thankfully, the story sections were really short. Really, really short. I always feel bad, certainly as a streamer, is when I've got people in the group who are viewers or friends or whatever. It's like, I'm going to watch and, voice the entire story, which can sometimes, certainly Alexander was very egregious of this. It could be like 20 minutes between raid fights while we do the entire story section. Wasn't that way this time. It was like a couple of minutes where it threw you back in. So the basis is there. I hope this story picks up. I do want to enjoy FF14 stories as much as possible. So I'm really hoping that picks up. As of right now, I really couldn't care less. So it is what it is. But that's the raid so far. Looking forward to Savage. I really hope, once again, I'll just announce this, is I will be part of the casting team along with OK Mage, Fat Boss Alex, and Jeetha Bell. We will be casting Echo's new team acquisition. If you're not sure, they have acquired Neverland, the world first raiders of FF14. The big production's going on. All of us is going to be on site, so I'll be traveling there. And try to put on the absolute best show possible for you guys. So if you want your Race to World First fix before the War Within comes, it's going to be a one-day banger. It's not going to be weeks and weeks like the WoW one. This is a one-day banger where these guys go seriously hard for maybe 24 hours. That's what we've been told. Be prepared for casting for 24 hours. Obviously not continuously, but it should be chaos. It should be fun, and I hope to see you there. All right, guys? Thank you so much for listening. Next up is Extremes. I want to do the Extremes. And we're gearing up. We want to get our gear so we can, be a relatively strong Pictomancer. All right? See you soon.